2015, in my opinion, was one of the best years in terms of video games. If I made a video of my top 10 favorite games of all time, at least half of them would be from this year alone. This was the year that gave us Until Dawn, Mortal Kombat X, Witcher 3, Battlefield Hardline, Black Ops 3, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Bloodborne, Splatoon, Super Mario Maker, and so many other amazing games, including my favorite game ever made, Dying Light. But before Dying Light became my favorite, there was one other game that, for a while, held the crown as my favorite game ever made easily. That game was Just Cause 3. As someone who used to watch Mythbusters all the time when I was a kid, a game that was literally about blowing up anything and everything in the most creative ways possible was bound to be a game that was quite literally made for me. The main game was unlike anything I ever played before at the time, and the DLC was amazing too. Hell, I even got my own father to play this game, and he also considers it one of his favorite games ever made as well. However, when all the DLC was released and I completed it all, I couldn't help but want more. Sure, the game is packed to the brim with content and things to do, but just like any other game, after a while, you tend to get burned out. But sure enough, 3 years later, on December 3rd, 2018, Just Cause 4 released. The months before it was released, I was so excited to have a sequel to one of my favorite games ever made. The trailers made it look amazing, with dynamic weather, multiple grapple types that were customizable, and look, with me being 14 at the time, I was still pretty gullible. The things that they showcased did look cool, and that was good enough to get me excited. Sure enough, when the game finally did release, I sat down to play it, and to my utter shock, the game sucked. My dad also thought the same thing. My friends who played this game said it was nowhere near as good as the previous. Even Uncle Ruckus was shocked at how much of a downgrade this game was compared to Just Cause 3. I mean, it did function, which is something I can't say about most AAA games that have come out in the past 10 years, but this game has more issues than a teenager has hair on their chin. While I disliked the game for a long time, I could never really pinpoint why. Was I just being too harsh? Was it just me not liking how the game is much different? Well, I played it again recently, and while I no longer hate it like how I used to, I'm still of the opinion that Just Cause 4 is nowhere near as good as the previous game. But what did this game do wrong that made it so much worse than Just Cause 3? Just Cause 3 was my introduction to the series. I have played the other two before making this video, but in my opinion, Just Cause 3 is still by far the best. Just Cause 1, while not a bad game, is very janky, frustrating, and in lack of better terms, it's definitely a product of its time. Because this game did come out when every game ever was trying to beat GTA with its open world and things to do, and Just Cause was just another one of those kinds of games. Just Cause 2, though, is where the series really created a name for itself. It improved just about everything, where progression in the first game was tied to tedious missions. In Just Cause 2, it's all about destroying things. It also had, at least at the time, the biggest open world of any game. However, if Just Cause 2 was a delicious New York strip, Just Cause 3 is a goddamn perfectly cooked ribeye. It expanded even more than the second game did, giving you unlimited explosive charges, a wingsuit to make mobility even easier, multiple grapples, and so many more quality of life changes. Just Cause 3 is, in my opinion, a damn near perfect sandbox game, allowing you to truly tackle any situation however you see fit. In a way, the closest thing to a perfect sequel alongside Just Cause 3 to me would have to be Garden Warfare 2. While the games before aren't bad by any means, there's almost no reason to come back to them since the sequel has improved on them in every possible way. However, if Just Cause 3 was a perfectly cooked steak, Just Cause 4 is what would happen if you took that steak and threw it into a volcano like General DiRavello's helicopter. Just Cause 4 took nearly everything that Just Cause 3 did perfectly, and did it worse. It took things that Just Cause 3 did and tried to add onto them, but did it in mostly worse ways, and the new features just tend to lack the potential they otherwise could have had. Overall, Just Cause 4 is the prime example that comes to my mind when I hear the phrase, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." This game just feels like it's designed to be mind-numbing and tedious, and I'm going to do my best to explain why Just Cause 4 is a disappointing and, dare I say, embarrassing sequel to Just Cause 3. So I'm going to discuss the issues I have with this game one at a time. In what order, who knows, but the main thing here is I'm going to do my best to be fair and not seem like I'm nitpicking this game. There are things I genuinely do like about this game. However, as you'll see as this video goes on, a lot of the things I like are small pieces to a bigger mechanic or feature, and once you look at it as a whole or compare it to Just Cause 3, that's when the cracks begin to show. So how about we start off with one of the things that hyped me up for this game, that being the weather.
I gotta go, Julia, we got cows!
There are 4 different weather events that can occur in the world of Just Cause 4, each one in a different area of the map tied to a different biome. Let's go through each of them one by one. The coolest one by far is the tornado, which is found towards the bottom of the map. Not only is it one hell of a sight watching the tornado destroy everything in its path, but it can also suck up your character as you parachute, wingsuit, and drive vehicles near it if you get too close. You also get to control after completing a certain mission, which is obviously really cool. It's by far the coolest and most destructive one of the 4 weather types. So how are the other 3 weather types? The short answer, really freaking boring. The top left of the map is a desert biome, and the weather that happens here is, well, obviously a sandstorm. Does it do anything cool, though? Well, unless you consider reducing your visibility and high winds that make it really annoying to use your parachute as the peak of all gaming, no, not really. In the top right of the map, you have a rainforest biome, which has, you guessed it, the thunderstorms actually have a pretty high risk, as wingsuiting and using aerial vehicles will often result in... Other than that, though, it doesn't do all that much. Finally, in the center of the map, you have the snowy mountain region, which has a blizzard, which is basically the same thing as a thunderstorm, but similar to Transit from Black Ops 2, it has the added benefit of not being able to see jack shit. Overall, I think the weather, aside from the tornado, is very boring in execution, even though conceptually it is a really cool idea. In a game all about destroying stuff, only one of the 4 weather types is actually capable of mass destruction. I know that this was probably done due to restrictions in the engine, but that doesn't stop it from being underwhelming. Overall, if I did something like this in the game, here's what I would do personally. Firstly, get rid of the sandstorm. It is literally the most boring and useless of the bunch. I get that they wanted to have a weather type that fit each biome, but honestly, I think it would have made more sense to do natural disasters that fit different biomes. And honestly, the desert biome, I would have personally done maybe a volcanic island with an active volcano that can occasionally erupt. Or, alternatively, if they had to have the desert biome, they could have had something that could fit in no matter what biome, like an earthquake that can destroy bridges and chaos objects. Secondly, I would replace the blizzard with avalanches that could happen at random. Not only could this lead to a visually stunning natural disaster, but it could also be a very creative way to wipe out chaos objects and reinforcements if you let the player cause them by using explosives. As far as the thunderstorm goes, I actually think having one disaster that is more of a risk to gameplay rather than being a means of destruction actually isn't a bad idea. The problem arises from the fact that 3 of the 4 weather events in this game are basically copies of one another with one new thing added to each. It feels as if this idea was thought of last minute, when they had one cool idea and they just rushed the other 3. I do hope that if Just Cause 5 ever does happen, that they expand on this concept and have the weather tie into the nature, no pun intended, of destruction that these games are known for.
Kaboom! Yes, Rico. Kaboom.
Next up, let's talk about the weapons. Now, one criticism I have towards Just Cause 3 is that, for the most part, the weapons are pretty lackluster. At least the primaries and secondaries. The special weapons are pretty badass. There's not a huge selection of them to choose from, and they're all fairly basic. For example, there's 4 ARs, 1 LMG, and 2 shotguns for your primary weapons, not including DLC. And none of them are exactly breaking new ground. Like, would you rather have full auto AR number 1 or full auto AR number 2? Sure, they have different damage values, but that's really all that's different. At least in Call of Duty, each gun in a class has certain pros and cons, and there's a lot more choices, not even including attachments. This isn't necessarily a bad thing though, because the core focus of Just Cause is blowing shit up. The primary and secondary weapons are just there to give you extra firepower to deal with enemies while you destroy stuff. There are more weapons in Just Cause 4, however, in Just Cause 4, you can only hold 2 weapons at a time, whereas in Just Cause 3, you had 3, technically 4 if you include the GE64 explosives. Also, if you run out of ammo in this game, for some reason Rico just fucking throws the weapon onto the ground, which is really annoying on things like rocket launchers, where ammo isn't necessarily impossible to come by, but it is definitely more rare compared to things like your standard assault rifles and SMGs. So instead of being able to hold on to the weapon and collect ammo as you're playing the game, no, you gotta find a whole nother gun to pick up after Rico throws it onto the ground. It could be argued that this was done intentionally to promote strategy, but this is fucking Just Cause. I shut my brain off and go, whoa, pretty explosions. I don't play this game to be strategic. In Just Cause 4 though, almost every gun has a secondary fire feature, so I guess you technically can have up to 4 weapons, but let's be real, it's only 2. While some of these weapons are really cool, like the RG-PBA-9 railgun and the Storm-Along EM-0, which is basically the gravity gun from Half-Life, a lot of these guns either just feel like guns from Just Cause 3, or the alternate fire mode is really situational or sometimes even totally useless. For an example of the former, take the AT-3-X RPG, where the primary fire mode fires a cluster of rockets in a straight line like the Capstone Hydra from Just Cause 3, and the alternate fire mode makes the rockets lock on, like the Fire Leech from Just Cause 3. There's also the PBX Mine Launcher 2A7, did I mention the names for most of these guns are fucking terrible, where it shoots sticky grenades that can be manually detonated, so like the GE64s from Just Cause 3, but not infinite, which is what made those things so fun to use. Well then, if you want examples of the latter, where the alt fire mode is anywhere from useful in niche circumstances to only being useful for wiping my ass, there are a few examples, one being the railgun I mentioned earlier. The alt fire on this gun is that it shoots out a drone that can kill enemies, and this is really only good for certain situations like defending objectives, which don't worry, we will get into. And they seem to really like this alt fire mode because it's on the railgun, the SW7-PBA assault rifle, and is the main fire mode of the Renegade DLC assault rifle. The worst one by far though is the CC-10 shotgun. It's a regular shotgun, but the alternate fire mode is a stun grenade. A stun grenade in Just Cause. Not even the fucking wiki knows what the purpose of this alt-fire stun grenade mode is. This isn't Call of Duty where you need to have a tactical grenade on you. This is Just Cause, all about blowing shit up. Sure, you do have the occasional ones that feel like they were both unique and designed with the core gameplay in mind, but way too many of these either feel gimmicky like the drones, or were just done better in Just Cause 3 like the mine launcher and RPG I discussed earlier. Not to mention, just about all of these alt fire modes have very little uses, like 4 to 6 uses, and to my knowledge there is no way to upgrade how much ammo you have like you could in Just Cause 3, which would be fine if these abilities were overpowered, but most of them aren't. Overall, again, I do like this concept of each gun having a unique fire mode, but just like the weather, it feels like they ran out of time brainstorming ideas for this concept. Next up, let's discuss the customizable grapples. This is actually the one thing that I'm going to discuss in this video that I will mostly be praising. Most of the complaints I have for this are honestly just personal preference, but overall though, this is probably the best feature of this whole game. However, the problem arises from just how complicated they make this system. So there are 3 different grapple types in this game. The standard retractor, which works the same way as Just Cause 3, where you can pull 2 items towards one another. the booster grapples, which work the same way as the one gear mod from Just Cause 3 that turns your explosives into rockets, and the airlift, which works like a grapple version of those balloons from Metal Gear Solid 5 where you can attach them to enemies and equipment to send them flying away. You can deploy a maximum of 10 grapples at a time, which is insane compared to Just Cause 3 where you could only have up to 6. However, unlike Just Cause 3, you don't need to upgrade how many maximum grapples you can have at once. No, you get 10 grapples by default. On top of this, you're able to mix and match different grapple types, allowing for even more ways to get creative. For example, in the gameplay you're currently watching, I used 8 balloons and 2 booster grapples to turn a shipping container into an aerial vehicle. On top of that, you're able to customize each of these types of grapples to allow even more creative means of destruction. However, unfortunately, some of these modifications seem like filler. There are some really fun and useful ones, such as the pulsability on the retractor and the explosive hydrogen and armor mods on the balloons, but others, such as the peak altitude effect on the balloons, just feel like filler. Like, the peak altitude effect options are hover and pop, but the peak effect by default is hover. And besides, you only need one button pressed to pop the balloons anyways, so while I could see situations where you want the balloons to stop lifting at a certain altitude, why on earth would you change the mod from hover to pop when you can just, I don't know, press one button to make it pop yourself? But I'm getting a little nitpicky. I actually do have a couple of issues with this system, however, those being the loadouts as well as how you go about unlocking the mods. Let's start off with the loadout system. Now, I am going to do my best to explain the system, but if you get confused by it, that's kind of the whole reason I'm discussing this. Basically, you get 3 different loadouts that you can switch between quickly and easily. Each of these loadouts is allowed to have all 3 grapple types, and you can choose whether they go off automatically, from tapping a button, or by holding the button down. Not only that, but you can have multiple grapple types in the same loadout go off at the same time. For example, you can set both the boosters and airlifters to go off together. What makes this even more confusing though is that you can have the same grapple type mounted to 2 or even all 3 ways of activation on the same loadout. So for example, you can have the airlifters automatically have a medium pulling force to them, but with the press of a button you could make it stronger or even weaker. While this does sound cool, in my opinion at least, this whole loadout system adds a whole nother layer of complexity that really just shouldn't be there. Especially since you're able to use multiple loadouts at the same time. So there's never a reason to have multiple grapple types on one loadout when you can just have each loadout correspond to one grapple type, which is what I normally do. But then that begs the question, why even have the loadout system? Just make it so you can switch between the 3 grapple types. Now, I hear some of you clacking away at your keyboards telling me I'm an imbecile, moron, and dare I say even a goober, because the system was clearly put in place so that you could have different mod combinations in each loadout. To that I say, first of all, watch your fucking language, there are kids watching this video, and secondly, why not just go to the menu and change the mods there? This isn't an online game like Call of Duty where you gotta constantly remind your mom that you can't pause. You can go into the menu, change the mods, and resume the game with no issues. While yes, this is a more tedious option, in my opinion it's way less confusing. Hell, at the time of me writing this part, I have 2.5 days played on this game, and I still barely understand the loadout system in this game. I do think this single system results in a lot of confusion where there really shouldn't be any. Just make it so that the player can switch between the 3 types of grapple at will, which, by the way, you can already do in this game. The loadout system is just way too overly complicated and honestly pretty useless in my opinion. Next, let's discuss how you get the mods for the grapples. There are 3 people you can do missions for, each helping you progress towards unlocking mods for the 3 different grapple types. There's Sargento, who progresses your airlift mods, Javi, whose missions progress your retractor mods, and finally Garland, who helps with progressing your booster mods. All of these people have a certain type of objective in the open world and random encounter missions. Overall, I think that the standard objectives are fine conceptually, but very bare bones and basic in execution, with the exception of the tombs for Javi. I'm a sucker for puzzles, and I think the puzzles for these tombs are actually really fun and interesting, and they use the retractors in a satisfying way, as well as reward exploration. The other 2, though, are very underwhelming. Sargento's main form of progression is from destroying zeppelins around the map. While you would think that I love this idea, since it does tie into the core gameplay of destruction that Just Cause is known for, it's literally destroying one item and moving on. So any excitement that could have been there gets demolished faster than anything painted silver and red in these games. As for garlands, they're the most plentiful and the worst ones by far. But I'll save my thoughts on them for later. For right now, just know that it results in Garland's progression track being heavily lopsided compared to the other two tracks. Don't worry, this will become relevant again, and I will talk about these more when I get to it. But the random encounters, though, are another beast entirely. Now again, I do have to give them credit for at least making them have a purpose now. In Just Cause 3, random encounters did very little. Only certain missions would actually give you a reward, and that would be an extra restock point for resupply beacons and flares. Also, there's no penalty for not completing them or failing them, both in Just Cause 3 and 4. So while at least in Just Cause 4 they contribute slightly more technically, in all actuality you could consider them just as useless as they were in the previous game. A lot of these are just repeats of random encounters from Just Cause 3, such as the limo assassinations and vehicle deliveries, and the major new ones are nothing to write home about. You get such thrills as blowing up a single vehicle, grappling a stuntman to a boat, assassinating 3 targets with a sniper rifle, and the worst one by far is where you gotta get into a sports car and lose your wanted level, because it is actually really hard to do that, since the enemy AI will chase you to literal hell and back. A lot of times when I became wanted, which by the way isn't even a meter in this game, it's just one icon that turns to red when you become wanted. I have no idea why it's like this. It's not like GTA invented stars, but anyways. The enemies would immediately send helicopters and fucking jets after me, making it really difficult to lose heat. This isn't just in missions either, this is also the case in standard gameplay, but I'm getting off topic. However, that's not my biggest problem with these missions. The problem I have with this system is just how hard to come by the encounters are. Listen, I get that they're called random encounters, but goddamn, trying to find these missions is like looking for a needle in a haystack at times. What makes them even harder to come by is, unlike in Just Cause 3, where not only does an icon appear like a waypoint allowing you to see exactly where the event is, but there's also an audio cue either from the civilian calling Rico for help, or Alyssa radioing you to let you know about the mission nearby. In Just Cause 4, however, when a random encounter appears nearby, there's just a small icon that appears in the top left corner of your screen alongside a text box. Then you have to track the mission before being able to start it. This combined with how rarely they spawn in the first place makes it feel like you have to go out of your way to find them, which kind of takes the whole random part out of the equation when you gotta go around for 20 minutes to find one. And are the mission rewards worth it?
Ha! No.
Like I stated earlier, these progress your meters to unlock mods for your grapplers, but they only give you roughly 150 points each. While this does seem like a fair number considering how simple some of these are, these encounters pop up so infrequently that it really doesn't even matter. Now, I am going to give the game the benefit of the doubt that maybe I just had really bad luck, but compared to Just Cause 3, while Just Cause 4 technically has a better system, it is still heavily flawed. Overall, I do really enjoy the customizable grapple system and what it does for the game. However, just like many other things with this game, it still is pretty flawed.
Now that's a supply drop.
Next, let's discuss the supply drop system. In Just Cause 3, you were able to have up to 4 items in a single supply drop. A primary, secondary, and special weapon, as well as a vehicle. Now, you don't have to use all 4 slots, but the option is there. However, there are cooldowns and limited uses before you need to restock, so you can't just spam these. But it does allow you to change your whole loadout and give you a vehicle in a very quick and effective way. So how does Just Cause 4 compare? Well, first of all, there are multiple different pilots and you can pick which ones to call in items, but this is also tied to your fast travel system, which I'll get into in a little bit. Each of them have cooldowns, once again to prevent spamming them. Each item can also be called in a maximum of 3 times at once before those need to cool down as well. But there's also 7 different pilots. You can equip the same items onto multiple pilots as well. You also get to orient the supply drop to make sure that the vehicle is facing the direction you want it to, but that's only ever useful for a couple of different cars. However, there is one problem I have with this system. Instead of being able to call in a whole loadout at once, you can only call in one item at a time. I have one question, or actually I have two. The first one being,
Whose idea was this?
and the second one is,
What the fuck were they thinking?
seriously, why did they think this would be an improvement to what Just Cause 3 did? Just Cause 3's system was convenient and easy to learn, but Just Cause 4's system is just so much more inconvenient and tedious than it was in Just Cause 3. You see what I mean now when I say that Just Cause 4 tries to change things that were already just fine? Speaking of which, it's time we get to the final discussion point in this video.
A lot of people ask me, do you ever get tired of blowing stuff up? I tell them no, I don't.
Now, let's discuss the biggest problem I have with this game, and I've saved this point for last because this is the number one thing holding the game back for me, and that is the progression, both in terms of the liberation and the unlocks. Now, really quick, I am going to go into minor spoiler territory. I won't be spoiling anything that happens in terms of the story, but I will be spoiling some of the missions and what you do in them in both Just Cause 3 and 4. This is also where I'm going to be comparing both games the most. All of the other points were pretty small in comparison, but while Just Cause 4 could still easily be a really good game in the series with all the previous criticisms that I still have, this is the thing that the game fundamentally messes up. Like, in my opinion, there is no way they could have made this game fit into the Just Cause series, especially after Just Cause 3. The only way this game could have worked, in my opinion, is if it was straight up part of a whole nother series. First, let's discuss both the missions and the liberation system. Not only because these 2 points kind of go together, but because when comparing these two games side by side and how they accomplish this, you can tell exactly why this game is so much worse than Just Cause 3. Let's discuss the liberation system first. In Just Cause 3, liberating provinces is very simple. There's a certain number of towns and bases in each province that is under the control of the Mediterranean army. In order to liberate a province, you need to liberate each of these areas. And how do you do that? Well, there are certain objects in each location that you need to destroy called chaos objects. Once you destroy all of the chaos objects in an area, you can claim that settlement. Claim all of the settlements in a province, and you liberate the province. This is literally the most perfect system they could have made in a Just Cause game, because as I've said multiple times earlier, it ties to the core fundamentals of the Just Cause series, that being blowing shit up. Not only that, but you can tackle each of these areas however you see fit in whatever order you would like, truly allowing you to experiment and get creative. You can get in a tank and blow everything up that way, you can go grapple only if you'd like, or you can unleash your inner Kim Jong-un and nuke the shit out of everything with the M488. Like I stated earlier, Just Cause 3 is what I would consider to be the closest thing to a perfect open world sandbox game. So how did Just Cause 4 improve on this? Just Cause 4. Improve. That's a good one. Remember how I said in Just Cause 1 the missions were tedious? Yeah, for some unexplained reason, Just Cause 4 decided that instead of tying liberation to liberating settlements and blowing things up like the previous two games, instead you need to complete missions in order to be able to liberate each zone, known as region strikes. Now, I wouldn't mind this approach if the missions were fun, but most of these missions are quite literally some of the most irritating mission types ever created. For example, in some of these missions, you are tasked with defending a transmitter from a bunch of Black Hand forces. Sounds easy, right? Well, no, because the gold tools in Minecraft have more durability than these fucking transmitters. In one mission, you have to go across the base to destroy scramblers so the data can continue being transmitted, but you're unable to defend it while you're doing this, and the Black Hand will continue to try and destroy the transmitter while you're occupied with something else. I remember when this game first came out, I tried doing this mission for like an hour straight before giving up and having, I think, like a dozen attempts or so. I tried this again recently, and I actually beat it on my first try, but I genuinely feel that that's only because nothing spawned in for like the first half of the transmitter progress bar filling up. Especially considering I beat the mission with there only being a sliver of health left on the transmitter. There's even more thrilling missions, such as escorting prisoners outside of a base while a bunch of enemies attack them, driving 10 vehicles rigged with explosives into water to disarm the explosives, which I personally see as a giant middle finger because you're doing the complete opposite of what Just Cause is about, flipping switches around an area within a certain amount of time, and so many more annoying and tedious tasks. Now, yes, Just Cause 3 had some annoying missions as well, such as escort missions, but those weren't required for progression outside of continuing the story. In Just Cause 4, it feels like the core gameplay was tossed aside in favor of making the game more focused on completing tedious missions. In a way, honestly, it makes it almost feel like a Ubisoft game rather than a Just Cause game. And I actually do like a lot of Ubisoft games despite their bad reputation. But that's exactly where the problem lies. I don't play Just Cause for mission-based gameplay. If I wanted to play something like that, I would play either something like Ghost Recon Breakpoint or Helldivers 2. It works for those games where it fits the core gameplay, but in Just Cause 4, it's almost like they want to abandon everything that made the third game so beloved, trading fun and chaos for just frustration and tedium. However, that's where we lead to the most insulting thing about this game, and it's how they handled the chaos objects. Since the developers made progression tied to missions rather than destruction, you might be sitting there wondering what purpose the chaos objects serve in this game. Well, I'll tell you, and honest to God, it is the most insulting part of this whole game, because the purpose they do serve is honestly so small that it really doesn't even matter. So, chaos objects in this game progress a meter that, when filled up all the way, give you squads that you can use to push the front lines of a war back. You need a certain number of squads to liberate each zone too. The problem is that A, you need to complete that area's fucking abysmal mission first, and B, you can only liberate areas adjacent to where you have already liberated. While you can do the missions in any order, it feels very limiting on what you can do, since if you go out of order, you'll need to do a lot of waiting before you can capture the area. Honestly, this system makes Just Cause 4 the one thing a Just Cause game should never ever be. It makes Just Cause 4 a grind. Not only that, but the chaos objects don't stay destroyed. I get why this is the case due to this specific system, but that shows exactly why this is a poor idea from its inception. What makes destroying chaos objects so satisfying in Just Cause 3 is that the game's world felt like it was reacting to what you did. Every object you destroyed meant something. The map changed little by little with every item that you destroyed. In this game though, you destroy the chaos objects, leave the area, come back, and suddenly everything is back to normal. This single decision literally goes against what made Just Cause 3 so fun and satisfying to play. However, with all of the chaos objects taking a back seat, there actually is a type of progression tied to all of the locations on the map. And we're going to need to go back to our old friend Garland. Remember how I said Garland's missions were the worst by far out of the customizable grapple types missions? Well, the main form of progressing the booster mods is by doing stunts at every location. You may be wondering what these stunts are, and there's 3 different types. The first is the speed stunt, where you need to drive a vehicle through a ring going faster than a required speed. It is quite literally like driving past a single speed camera. The second type of stunt is where you need to get a certain vehicle through a ring. The thing is that the ring usually isn't in an easily accessible spot, meaning you kind of have to think outside the box a little. The final type of stunt is the wingsuit stunt. For this stunt, Just Cause 4 decided to steal from everyone's favorite game, Superman 64, and you need a wingsuit through 3 rings within a certain amount of time. Now, I know there are wingsuit courses in Just Cause 3 as well, but those at least required some skill and lasted more than 15 seconds. Overall, these missions wouldn't bother me too much if it wasn't for the fact that there are so many of them, and the fact that it took away the single best thing about Just Cause 3. There are 124 wingsuit stunts, 127 vehicle stunts, and I shit you not, 185 speed stunts in total. leaving you with a grand total of 436 different stunts to complete in this game. Yes, this is fully optional, yes, a lot of these are mind-numbingly easy, but 436 is way too many. And do you get anything for completing all of these? You do get some rewards for completing certain ones, but aside from some parachute and wingsuit skins, you don't get anything, that I know of at least, for completing every single one of them. By the way, that takes us to our next and final section, that being the unlocks. When it comes to unlocking things in Just Cause 4, there's your typical completing missions and securing regions, but there are several vehicles in particular that can only be unlocked by completing certain stunts. A lot of the time though, the vehicle you're unlocking is the same one you just used to unlock it in the first place, making it kinda pointless. Not to mention, some of these things that you can unlock access for in order to call them in with supply drops are really fucking stupid. Yes, Just Cause 3 also had some joke things like the tractor or the fishing boat, but in this game they took it to a whole nother level. You have your standard weapons, planes, tanks, and sports cars, but then you have things like a forklift, a tractor, a jet ski that's modeled like a rubber duck, a barrel, a bulldozer, and is that a fucking Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy reference? Why? I get a lot of these are meant to be goofy, but some of these are locked behind missions, and I'd personally rather have an actual reward than something that I'll barely use aside from fucking around. But the worst one, by far, is the reward for completing the Urku Verde, I probably butchered the name of that, province of the map. Your reward for liberating this zone is, drumroll please, a fucking cargo container. I don't even think I need to say anything else. This just speaks for itself. Hey, can I end this segment here? Alright, I know I sounded harsh at points in this video, or my criticisms were kind of nothing, or I just made jokes at this game's expense, but Just Cause 4, more than any other game, just frustrates and disappoints me. It's not a bad game by any means. I actually did enjoy a lot about this game, and trust me, I have played much, 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 much worse. But the problem isn't necessarily the game itself. It's the fact that it feels like it has an identity crisis, or just doesn't even want to be a part of the series that it's in. Just Cause 3 was inevitably going to be a very high bar to overcome, especially with all the praise that it gets, but it doesn't even really feel like they tried with this game. Actually, that's kind of an inaccurate statement, because I definitely do see that effort was put into this game, but Just Cause 4 feels like they tried to change so much about what made Just Cause 3 work. So much so to the point where, rather than an improvement, it feels like a downgrade or a step back. There are definitely things to like about this game. Hell, despite how critical I sounded in this video, I did actually have fun revisiting this game, for the most part. I could see you loving this game if this was your introduction to the series, but coming off of where 3 left off, it's hard to deny that Just Cause 4 feels like they tried way too hard to do something different. Just Cause's main appeal, at least to me, is pure destruction and chaos. You take away that core and you're left with just another bland open world game. And in a genre as oversaturated as open world games, you need to have something new you bring to the table in order to stand out. I know people who didn't even know there was a fourth Just Cause game, and considering how much praise Just Cause 3 gets to this very day, it's honestly pretty sad to see. I just hope that if Just Cause 5 ever does happen, they will learn from their mistakes and go back to what worked in Just Cause 3. So that was the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for the support in 2024. It was a very rough year for me, and YouTube was really helping me get through it. So I want to say thank you to everybody who has clicked on this channel, seen my videos, commented, even if you disliked it, I still appreciate you guys. And I'm hoping to be very ambitious for 2025. I have a lot of video ideas that I want to get out. A lot of those being longer videos like this, which hopefully the reception to this kind of video is good, because there actually are a couple of other games I want to do analysis or review videos on. But with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like and maybe even subscribing or sharing this with a friend. And I'll talk to you all next time. Peace out.